stuff.
Where are we going to?
To the moon, baby.
Excellent.
To the moon.
Yeah, I'd love to go there if I could.
Out into the stratosphere.
Mm.
Welcome to the Bear Collective podcast. Welcome back for another week.
Back. That sounds better.
Welcome back for another week. Glad you joined us. So happy you're here. Today, we are talking. Today is actually, at the time of filming this, it is the 9th anniversary of my mum's passing. And I went for my little walk on the beach this morning, place that I usually go when I come visit Jazzy. And not to dive into that from a too deep or heavy lens, not because we won't talk about it at some stage, but it's a place I feel really at peace with today. But the bigger question when I was walking along the beach that it made me think about was, it's really important to think about how you as an individual process something. And not just in the context of these big life events or defining moments or traumas, but just in general, when you have an experience, when you have a trigger, when you're sleep deprived, as I know that you're experiencing a bit of that, being a new mum. And it's, just thinking about how do you process, how do you get to a space of having a healthy response just to life rather than sitting in that reactivity.
It's a great question. And it's, just something that I hear a lot. I need to learn to process. And I kind of want to start with, like, how many of us don't learn how to do this because we don't see it role modeled. We're not really sat down in a classroom, where they say, okay, this is what we're doing. We're learning to process emotion today or difficult situations today, and here's how we do it. And so, as adults, we find ourselves sitting on therapy couches, listening to podcasts and thinking, how do I do this? How do I process?
Validate it. I think there's a lot of validation that comes from listening to podcasts and being like, yes, I experience that. That's exactly what I'm thinking or feeling. Or like they just know exactly what I'm talking about. But they just internalize the listening versus actually sitting with the situation. So like whether it's we did an episode on how to fight right where we shared a conflict that we had and how we worked through that, but that can come up like in a workplace, in your relationship at home, again just with yourself, when you're sleep deprived, when you're you've had such a busy day and you have forgotten to eat, right, and you get really hangry. It's like actually just sitting simply with the question of, how am I processing this right now? How am I actually showing up, and how do I want to show up?
Yeah, and I think, like, I can tap into me this morning for sure. Let's do it. I have a currently like 6.5-month-old, and he woke every hour for a long period of time. We might have got 10 minutes here and there from 2 a.m. till like 5 or 5:30 when he did eventually wake up. For any baby sleep doctors listening to this, please come and help me.
The DMs are open.
Yes. So I'm tired when I wake up, and I wake up and that's my narrative. Like in my head, I'm just like, it is going to be the worst day. Filming will be so difficult. And how am I going to make sense of what I want to say and the messages I want to get across? Like, I'm going to be so dazed and confused. All of those ongoing, narratives that were very victim mentality to my night of a lack of sleep.
The worst case scenario, the negative bias that plays out, that inner voice, the inner critic that just, your day is ruined when it's, 8 a.m.
Yeah, right? And as I'm sitting there and I'm hearing myself say these things, I mean, thank goodness I now have some skills to process, because sitting and listening to them is the first step for me.
Yeah.
Like focusing on what it is that I'm saying to myself and how that's feeling in my body. and, you know, going, okay, am I going to choose to go with that, or am I going to make this different? Am I going to change this for myself? And I chose half and half, I think. At the time I chose, you know, I am going to, like, I'm getting on with it, I'm doing things, you know, and a few other things happened in the day that tried to take me, I almost tried to go back to that victim story, like when he woke up right when we were about to start recording for the first time. And then I was like, okay, no, what am I going to choose to do? And I got you on board to help me, and I was like, you know, what am I going to choose to do to make this day okay?
Yeah.
And be able to be present and
that's the thing.
calm
I mean,
into that.
if you're sleep deprived, I mean, if you're hungry, grab an apple, people. Just grab an apple, start eating. You'll get there. Drink some water, get hydrated. However, I think how you approached it also was very healthy. You entered in, you leapt to the day, like when we went to film, and you let me know how you were feeling. But also you decided and shared how you were responding to that. So what that does is, and that felt super light for me to receive, it's kind of just clocking, hey, this is where I'm at, this is how I'm feeling, and this is what I'm choosing. And then me as a friend to support you is just holding you accountable through the day to that, right? And again, that's a very supportive, very mature way to do it, rather than we could have easily just gone, oh, okay, well, Jazz is dulled out, I can't do it on my own.
Yeah.
So therefore I'm tapped out, and then it could have impacted and had a ripple effect onto my day and thinking, oh, well, you know, came here to do this, it's not getting done. And that's how that negativity can spiral and ripple effect out into other people's lives and the people that you're around. But you, again, we just shared how you demonstrated literally doing it in such a healthy way. And we've supported that flow. And what it requires when you're tired is literally, it does require you to tap in to more levels of consciousness.
Yeah.
But it doesn't require you thinking about the whole entire day.
Yes.
It requires you thinking hour by hour, half an hour by half an hour.
At a time.
Every 10-minute block, what it is. And just being conscious, okay, yeah, today's a day I'm tired. And I do this for myself. There are days where, you know, I've been run off my feet and I'm, you know, physically, literally doing 10,000 steps a day or plus, because I've had such a busy day and commuting and building business and all the things, that I get tired as well. And there are days where I don't feel like doing things, but I know doing them is the right thing and that I am actually capable of doing them. I can default to just being like blaming all these things around me, but I'm actually capable of doing them.
And when we blame, like, that's when we're not in the processing.
Yeah.
Like, we're just sitting in it.
Yeah.
And not processing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's definitely about choosing that. How am I choosing to respond? I think is what I really want to dive into, because otherwise we're living in a reactionary state. We're living in a reaction to life. And this is where also, when you dive into personal development work, this is where people can find it feels very heavy, because they're actually going, oof, I'm seeing the last decade where I've been making all these decisions or operating very unconsciously, this kind of fly by the seat of my pants, this no plan is the plan, you know. I'll just let the universe decide for me, like, how to live my life, and I can do it tomorrow, and I'll put this off. There's all these ways in which are very out there as a modality to live by, that if you tap into them, when you look back, you're like, oh, I actually wasn't consciously making decisions for my life. I wasn't directing it. And when you're not directing, you're not the main player of your own life. You're not main character energy. And you default to feeling really heavy and uncovering stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and possibly even like quite down in the dumps.
Yeah.
You know, like no direction, no purpose, zero passion, no creativity. Like you're immobilized in a way. Yeah. You're stuck.
Yeah, very much so. And that will feel like a heavy energy in your body. You might even feel like it's a bout of depression, or you're just feeling really low. And that can make you pull away from doing personal development work.
Yes.
Which then just puts you into that complete avoidance state, denial, shoving your head in the sand, rejection of not wanting to see yourself. But from both of us having been on the journey, and I think you'd agree with me, that there is a period of that. If you can have the resilience and the persistence to go through that initially, you develop skills and it becomes so much lighter. And it doesn't take a decade to do that.
No, and you know what, this reminds me, like, and you actually, this is something you have talked to with me around ego death, and like where we have those big moments of, oh my gosh, I've been doing that, and that's why I've been doing that. You have that realization, that awakening. There's like, I tell clients now, like, you're going to be tired for about a week. Like, get ready to be tired. Drink lots of water. Take care of yourself. And they often come back now and they're like, you were so right. Like, I was so exhausted for like a week. And then what's really interesting is they go into that space of either shaming or blaming. So shaming themselves and blaming others, or blaming others. Or they then use that as the, okay, how am I going to change this? How do I step beyond this now that I see it?
And that, I mean, there's two pathways my head's going here.
Okay.
But
choose your own adventure story.
Oh my God, I referenced that this week. Those books are so good.
Aren't they?
They're just not
they teach such a valid skill. No.
Yeah.
Maybe we should write one.
We should bring it back.
Let's do it. Okay, anyway. Sorry. Ping, ping, ping.
That's the train of thought. No.
Two paths.
So one is that's where energetically what you can feel, that heaviness, that often is an experience of a shame or a guilt that you may not be conscious of. That is that energy, that low energy. And the second thing that I was thinking was, it's not bad to experience shame. Yeah. It's just, shame actually teaches us lessons about what we want and what we don't want for ourselves. Yeah. It also has absolute golden nuggets in it to places of healing, but even places of purpose and direction in life. And that level of vulnerability. But also, it's how you sit in the shame makes the difference between whether you go into that running and avoiding, doing personal development work, or whether you can hold yourself through the shame, move through it, to a point where you feel it, you experience it, and you're releasing it whilst you're mentally processing it. And the shame is the physical process part, because it's the feeling in the body. Yeah. And you actually transition through that. And that's where the transformation happens. That's where the death happens. That's the ego death. That's where the aha moment happens. That's where you get this then surge of like lightness and renewed life. And people look around and go, you look different. Has something changed? What's changed? And it's like, ego death.
Do you have like an example that you're wanting to share, happy to share, like of sitting with that shame in that healthy way, like through the golden nuggets, and like a personal share?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest ones that I had, which I've shared with you, was around, and I didn't even know that it was a thing for me, was around uncovering, at the root of it was around self-love. And I remember sitting in all, like, what they call like the weeds, right? You're just sitting in like all these thoughts and these stories and this chaos that's happening in your head. And you're also in this whirlpool of all these mixed emotions that are coming up that are generally that kind of heavy feeling. It's like there's the anxiety, there's the stress, there's the shame, there's the guilt, there's frustration, there's anger, there's sadness, there's hurt, there's this whirlpool of emotions, and none of it's kind of like, in a sense, making sense. But through that chaos comes clarity. And I remember, you know, you're trying sometimes mentally to like process it and make logical sense of it. And that's kind of like not working. It's getting you more frustrated, more angry, more upset. More like
no matter where you turn, there's like something else like popping up its head.
You feel like you're going down this never-ending like rabbit hole. If you can hold yourself through that, I end up on a park bench overlooking Sydney Harbour, And it literally just moved through me. There was a clicking noise in my body.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I don't know how to describe the ego death part.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to do a terrible job at it here.
That's
But
fine.
it's almost like this epiphany just comes as a wave throughout your body.
Yeah.
And I was literally said out loud to myself, I love myself. And I felt so healed. And there was also, I described it as like what I felt was like a foreign object, like a saucer or a plate or something that was metal that just, is it metaphorically, felt like it was sitting inside my head?
Yeah, like
I
a
felt
clamp
like,
on your head, like a blockage
no,
type,
just like,
around
like
the...
just a plate that's
Okay.
inside my head.
Okay.
That was metal. And it was like a ceiling. There you go. Kind of like the metaphorical glass ceiling.
Yes.
But it was metal that couldn't crack through. And that's, I think, what all those emotions and the thoughts were just creating what felt like this block. And that's where the block manifested for me in my head. And literally that dissolved in that moment. I felt like, that popping, cracking noise in my body. And I felt the wave of like self-love come over me, and I have been literally a different person ever since.
And that would be like an example of, would you say that that's something you have processed? Like that's you through the processing of an emotion or an experience?
That was the
like
ego
that's
death.
That's
actual
specifically
moment of
the ego death.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and coming out the other side. So that's all in the lead up.
Yeah.
That's the end, like the end kind of result of coming out of that.
Yeah.
The processing is messy. It's chaotic. It's that whirlpool of all the emotions. It's all the thoughts that are coming in. I was trying to work with my coach at the time, and there were just so many things that I was making a problem. Some were legitimate and some were stories that I was creating around situations. And there was like all of them all at once, like regurgitating it like all out.
Yeah.
Versus actually sticking to one thing and getting clarity around it. But I think that's what actually helped drive towards that ego death.
Yeah.
Was that everything was coming up to purge.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about yourself?
For me, I mean, interestingly, my ego death was around a similar thing, or the same thing, as you know. And I mean, for me, the moment that I realized that that's what I was doing, and that was more my ego death, was like realizing that that's what every pattern, every behavior, every point in my life was kind of leading me towards, like this continual story of I'm unlovable. And I described the feeling as like a rock hitting the ocean floor, and I actually had that image as it was happening in my head. It was like 3 a.m. or something, and I was in bed, and I just remember like, this image of a rock hitting the ground, and it was like this ripple effect of waves throughout my body, so kind of like that similar thing. And it was such like an like that's why I've done all of this my whole life, like it makes sense, like you know, I was basically reaffirming the story of I'm unlovable to myself in all of these different ways, and like self-sabotaging so many things, and you know, gaslighting myself and all the rest of it, and abandoning myself, and and then it, like the next day I kind of remember waking up with this renewed sense of purpose, and it was like I wasn't just seeing straight in front of me anymore, like I was seeing well and truly, like peripheral vision was back. It's just like this expanded awareness. And I was tired for a week. And I was tired for a week. And beautifully, like before that, part of the processing for me was I had to learn to sit in my feelings. I hadn't learned that. I didn't know how to do that. I had a psychology degree and I hadn't learned how to do that. I'd been to different courses and none of them had taught me how to do that. They were all in the intellectual, in the head. And so, like, to get there, I really had to learn to sit with my emotions.
Yeah, I was just going to say that a lot of the work that I've seen, even like courses I've been on, stuff that I've did in my 20s, books, podcasts, a lot of it is around more of kind of like the mindset, but like logical lens. And I'm all for language. I'm a language lover.
You love your language.
Linguistic me, baby. Put that on a t-shirt. Totally.
Do it.
However, it is a mind-body connection. It is, it's a both thing. And also in the context of what we're talking about in terms of how you process, it's not necessarily there's one way or one specific thing that is going to get you there, but these tools teach you about yourself. And it's the combination of those things that you learn, and then you refine and go, this works for me, this doesn't work for me. That is what moves you through. You also mentioned something quite interesting there as well with what you had learnt. What I think is the most underestimated or underrated aspect of personal development to look at is the ego, is missing in so much work about actually understanding what it is, not making it right or wrong, because it's both. And understanding how that ties into your concept of self, your identity. That really is the turning point to where you can make real change, real transformation, and where you'll understand how those tools that you tend to borrow are nice to haves, but really it's coming back to yourself and going, okay, being present in the moment and going, okay, how am I dealing with this? How am I actually in real time processing this situation? And learning for yourself how you, the individual, process that moment.
I think that's the piece, like the ego especially, like that. It's such a good point, because until we know about that and why it's there, like the fact that it's a protective mechanism, and it's really present in a lot of our thoughts. Anywhere you're ruminating, you are in ego.
Family. That is one of the first places you can look at. There's look at how you handle conflict or difference of opinion or perspective with a sibling that you lived with and grew up in the same environment with. And the interpretation, can be completely different. Right? And what you take away from it. Like an example for me, in the past couple of years, I've been having this reoccurring thought around, many different things to do with like my parents and their divorce, but looking back and going, okay, how did they actually... I saw them have conflict, I saw them have fights, but I cannot remember as a child seeing how they resolved conflict. I saw the reactivity, I saw the silent treatment, I saw more conflict, I saw passion as resolution, which is
that facial expression says how you felt about that.
Yeah, it's one of those experiences when you walk in on your parents, it's like a thing that you never forget. And that came after conflict, and so didn't realise I was going to share that today. Sorry, Mum. But then kind of going through, like, siblings, we have fights, we have disagreements, we have different perspectives, but how am I actually showing up, and how am I processing that? Did I see that role modeled to me somewhere? Where did I actually learn the skill to process a conflict? Or did I not learn the skill, and therefore that's identifying a skills gap that I need to go and learn about, educate myself on, go in, not necessarily create conflicts, but when they arise naturally in your life, because they will, because the universe always gives you what you need in order to learn, heal, develop skills, when those things come up, then how am I practicing those skills in real time?
So with that example for you, like, what is the skill that you're practicing in real time now? Like, how to resolve conflicts in a healthy way?
Yeah, well, it's seeing conflicts in all different spaces. Like the conflict that we had, the conflicts or like disagreements, different opinion. Conflict doesn't necessarily mean a fight or an argument, but it's anything that's oppositional to you.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm actually sitting in this really beautiful observational space of witnessing when these events are coming up in different areas of my life and going, how am I thinking about that? How am I choosing to respond?
Yeah.
Do I actually like how I'm responding in the sense of, is that who I want to be in the future? Do I like that I feel like I'm running to rescue or help? Or in this one over here, am I reacting by justifying or defending or needing to prove something? What feels healthy? What feels clean?
Yeah.
You know, and really refining that, to make myself, again, even more emotionally mature, even more emotionally intelligent. It's the work I love. Because like attracts like, Jazz.
Oh, it does. You're bringing that up a lot, Bethany. and you know what?
Bringing it up and calling it in.
Yeah. For anybody who is like in the early days of personal development work and finding it really hard to come at anything from that place of observation to start
Heavy,
to process.
Tired, feeling that low depression. Yeah.
I mean, yes, always start with your fundamentals that Larissa goes on with about water, food, sleep. Yes, start
Movement.
with those. And then I actually, I think ego and listening to your thoughts is the great place to start, because we all have that inability, that inner ability to observe it. We all have that, no matter what we've gone through in our lives, no matter what we're sitting with today. We all have that innately within us to access. So you can start today.
Beautiful. And we have an episode on the fundamentals if you want to go and check that out. It's on Spotify and our YouTube in season 1.
We hope this helps you process, and we will
simply ask yourself that question. Just become conscious in the moment. How am I actually processing this? That'll teach you a lot about yourself, and then your opportunity if you want to change, evolve, become more healthy, emotionally healthy, emotionally regulated, emotionally intelligent.
Thank you for listening, watching and subscribing. We'll see you next week.
Bye.